You know, if we just kept singing that song at the end there over and over and over, that would have been okay. I could have done that for another half an hour. Be exalted now in the heavens as your glory fills this place. You alone deserve the praise because you're the name above all names. How good is that verse? That's who Jesus is, the name above all names. And, you know, when you do something like be in the presence of God or sing songs to God, what generally starts to happen is that you start to feel different because you're starting to not look at you and not look at the person next to you or what might have happened before you got to church or anything like that. And you're focusing just on Him. And so we start to focus on Him. And you start to think about things like, well, actually, you start to feel things like, oh, this is amazing to be in God's presence. This is incredible. It's awesome. It's almost undescribable, so unbelievable what you feel when you're in the presence of God. And, you know, I started to think about this whole idea as we're going to launch into awe and wonder. This is our next kind of thing we're going to be talking about over the next couple of months here. And I started to think, well, what in our life do we describe in these same ways that we might describe the presence of God? What are those things? So someone might describe a person in their life, like a soulmate or a best friend, or an event like the birth of a child or a grandchild, as something amazing or unbelievable to have experienced, right? Or what about things out in the world today, even things in nature, beautiful waterfalls or mountains, or even things that are made by people that are beautiful, like think about amazing buildings or landmarks that we go, oh, how incredible are those things? And we look at them and we're filled with this sense of, oh, it's beautiful, this sense of your breath almost being taken away by looking at and beholding something or someone so beautiful. And so I wanted to share a little something with you today, some things that make me have that moment of having your breath taken away. And most of these photos I actually took myself. They're not taken by, off the internet. This was a sunrise I caught earlier this year. Came around a corner, peeking through the trees, and there was the sunrise. And I went, and I stopped, and I just took it in because it was beautiful. A couple of weeks ago, we were at my brother-in-law's house, and that was the sunset down the back of their house. He's like, let's go out the back and watch the sunset. Because why would you want to just sit watching a screen when you're all together, when you can go outside and watch what God has created and watch the sky change colour and watch all those amazing things? Little newborns and little cuties, they make you go, oh, don't they? They make you do that. You might recognise these two children. They're much more grown up now and they're sitting in this congregation. But little newborns give you that feeling of awe and wonder and beauty. And then they grow up and get a bit bigger. And it's a different awe and wonder and beauty. It's like, how did they get so big so quickly, right? It happens. And what about when you're looking in an aeroplane and you look down and you can see horizon and you can see clouds and you see I'm in this little tin thing flying up in a humongous sky and all of that is underneath me? That's enough to make you feel quite in awe about your situation and wondering, like, this is amazing, right? And when we have these things that trigger awe and wonder inside of us, it doesn't just make us take a moment to stop, but it actually does something inside of us. And I started to explain that at the beginning when I was talking about being in the presence of God. When you are in a moment of being captivated by something, what starts to happen is we see different, we hear things, our senses take things in. And what actually happens is you become more happy, overjoyed, you start to take pleasure, you're taken aback by what you're looking at, and you're left wanting a little more. That's the thing about awe and wonder. It starts to change our physiology. Oh, here's some more of my personal favourites. A few years ago, I got to Paris for a few days. And let me tell you, I knew I was going to Paris and I knew I was going to see the Eiffel Tower. But nothing prepared me for turning the corner and seeing it. I went, like, this is what you see on TV. Like, I'm looking at it. Like, that was pretty epic looking at that. I must have more. Oh, and then when we went to Beverly Hills and I saw the Rodeo Drive sign, I'm like, this is all the famous movie stars walk in the movies with their shopping bags. I didn't have any shopping bags because I wasn't shopping there. But I was like, wow, look at those things that make us feel awe and wonder. Oh, yeah. Looking at the Grand Canyon, like just sitting there on the precipice of a rock. Yes, it was. If we fell, we would fall from there, from that view. But just sitting there looking at it, you feel very small looking at these very big rocks and mountains and valleys and rivers and things that flow through it. Oh, and here's a place that's just full of awe and wonder, Disney World. So you can see that by the smiles on these people's faces that they were very filled with awe and wonder this whole day that they were in Disneyland. And this brings us back to one of the beautiful sunsets, right? Why do we do things like this? Why do we love to look at beautiful things, to behold things God has made? Why do we love to do this, right? Whether it's a sunrise, a sunset, you're looking at the ocean or a mountain view or the beautiful greenery in a garden or a park. It could be we gazing lovingly at a new baby or a child. These things boost our mood, our energy, our immunity, and our serotonin levels, our happiness levels. It actually decreases our stress and our anxiety within our bodies and helps us slow down and not rush and enjoy life a little. Having a state of awe and wonder helps us to relax and refocus. It gives our eyes a chance to rest and take a break. It allows us to breathe more deeply and improves our general well-being. Awe and wonder gives us a chance to pause and really see God, really feel God, and really experience God. See, by God's design, there's something that can deepen our relationship with Him, but God's so good, He doesn't make it about Him, He makes it about us. Like beholding God and the things He does and the things He makes and the things He says in His words and the things we see Him do in my life and your life and the lives of people around us, beholding Him and focusing on Him and being in awe and wonder at those things has all of these amazing health benefits for us, body, soul, and spirit. When we engage in the practice of awe and wonder, we're generally more curious and creative as people. We are calmer, we are more generous, and we are less rushed. We feel more connected with God, with others, and the world around us. So this whole thing of awe and wonder is not just about looking at God and going, ooh, He's out there somewhere, this big God, and I'm so small and He's so infinitely big. It's not about that. It's about daring to get up close, because who knows that things are beautiful from a distance, but when you can get up close and see the detail, how much more beautiful is that thing? And sometimes you might need to go back a little just to kind of get the whole picture again, but then there's something else that you want to zone in on and focus on. And that's the invitation of awe and wonder, not just looking at God from a distance, because He is beautiful from a distance, but let me tell you, He's so much more lovely up close. So that's the invitation today. Let's practice awe and wonder in our daily lives. But I like to make things very practical. I don't just want to paint you a picture, or in this case, paint you a sunset and say, now go and feel great feelings about who God is. It's a bit more than that. We have to understand what awe and wonder actually is to be able to make it part of our lives and part of our walk with God. So awe, what is awe? Awe is a reverential or a deep respect mixed with fear or wonder. What is wonder? It is amazement, admiration caused by something beautiful, remarkable, or unfamiliar. Or in its doing form, wonder is a desire to know something more. How many times do we say, I wonder if, or I wonder when, right? But here we are wondering because we want to know more about God, the one who is so amazing that when we look at Him, right, we think, wow. So I'm proposing today that awe and wonder this deep reverential respect mixed with a little fear and mixed with a little wonder. I'm proposing that this is how we were always supposed to respond to God. Because he is beautiful, he is remarkable, and he is so very, very big. You know, you might think that you're really smart and you might really be, but you know what? You could never know all of God. You just never could. Our human capacity could never know all of God. And so the more you discover him, the more you're moved to want to know more of him. The more you find out who he is and the more he changes who you are, it just makes you more in awe of him. And so you wonder a little more, how will I know him more? How can I get closer? And in Psalm 34, verse 9, King David writes these words. He says, "Worship in awe and wonder, all of you who have been made holy, for all who fear him will feast with plenty." You see, and I feel like King David knows exactly where it's at. He's like, if you love God, if you are a friend of God, if, like we took communion today and we talked about how if you've confessed with your mouth and believed in your heart that Jesus is Lord and his blood has cleansed you, well, do you know then you've been made holy? You have been made separated for God. That's what holiness means, being separated for God. And so if you are one of the holy ones, then you should worship him in awe and wonder. Live a lifestyle of awe and wonder is essentially what King David is saying. If you've ever skipped to the back of the Bible and read any of the book of Revelation, it talks about there being God and his throne, and there are 24 elders around the throne and 4 living creatures, and they've got all sorts of things, eyes and horns and wings and everything everywhere, because God's just crazy in his creativity, right? But these 24 elders and 4 living creatures are constantly around the throne of God day and night, and all they do is cry, "Holy, holy, holy," and constantly bow down before him. And the minute they get up again, they just bow down again. And the minute they get up again, they just bow down again. And it's not because they're pre-programmed robots that have nothing else to do. It's because they are daily living in the presence of God. And what are they seeing all day? What are they seeing? God. What are they hearing all day? God. What are they beholding all day? God. And so they respond, "Holy, holy, holy," because they're in the presence of awe and wonder and fear of God. And the only response to who God really is to go, "Holy, holy, holy," worship in awe and wonder. That's the only real response. Now, not everyone, even in this building today, not everyone has perhaps had the same experience of God where you might feel that he's absolutely amazing and breathtaking. Some people's experience of God has been from a distance, or maybe they've only known God from someone else's idea or someone else's perception. Or maybe they actually have just made up ideas of who they think God is, but they don't have a personal experience with God. So I just want to take these next few moments of today just to whet your appetite a little bit, just to kind of give you some fabulous starting points of why we should look at God with awe and wonder. Or if you go, "Oh, this kind of sounds good, but how do I do it? Do I just stand outside in my backyard and look at the sky and hope I'm going to feel awe and wonder?" Like some people it happens that way, but I want to just give you some ideas straight from God's word which remind us and tell us why we are to look at him with awe and wonder. First one's really simple. The very start of the book, Genesis 1:1. God spoke the entire world and everything we see into existence. The sun, the stars, the sky, the land, the seas, all of it. He spoke it into existence. Psalm 19 says this: "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has sent a tent for the sun." You start to read that and get this idea of no wonder things outside in nature astonish us, because it's the story of who God is without a word being said. It says that rocks are going to cry out if they have to, right? But when you see amazing things like mountains or waterfalls or snow coming down on the Dandenongs, or when you see beautiful things like that, you realize this is all made by someone, and that someone must be huge, because what I'm looking at right now is amazing. So worship in awe and wonder, all of you who have been made holy, because he spoke the world into existence. God made us. He made humanity. He made us and didn't just make us. He breathed his breath into us. In Genesis 2 verse 7 it says, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." Psalm 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well." Isn't it amazing that it even mentions those words, fearfully and wonderfully made, because it was an awesome thing for you to be made. It is something to behold. Like sometimes, I don't know about you, but I wake up in the morning and go, oh, it doesn't feel so awesome to be getting out of bed right now. Something will creak, something will hurt, something will whatever, right? But we are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? Okay, I know that these earthen bodies decay because they're not meant to last forever. But the fact that our body knows how to do what it does, that our body knows how to breathe and our heart knows how to beat, and the things that have to happen, that's amazing. We are amazing, complex beings that could never be copied or recreated. We are unique individuals, each with the mark of God upon us, because he formed us and breathed his breath into us. That is something to worship in awe and wonder for. God walked among humanity and has desired intimacy with us from the beginning. If you read back in the beginning of Genesis, it says that God used to come and walk with Adam and Eve in the garden in the cool of day. If he didn't do it, it wouldn't say it. He was there and present with us from the beginning. He has wanted to be close from the beginning. Now, how incredible is that the Creator wants to be so intimate with his creation? And isn't it enough just to make you kind of tremble a little and go, oh, that's a big God. And sometimes when we think about God, because we know God, he can just be so familiar. We forget he's a big God. We forget he's a holy God. We forget that he is the God who made everything we see, because we are so familiar. It's a little bit like, I was probably like this when I was a kid, right? You live at your parents' house, you eat their food, you use their electricity, you use their water, and you forget that, they give you all those good things, and you kind of don't always treat mum and dad the best because they're familiar. We can sometimes become a little bit like that with God, but we don't want to be like that with anyone, but let alone with God, because he's so amazing. And this same God, the one who spoke the world into existence, the one who made us and formed us and breathed life into us, the one who has desired intimacy with us from the beginning, this same God has spent thousands of years outworking a master plan of love to restore us to original design. You see, by sending his son Jesus, God sent a part of himself to save the creation that he loved. God didn't just go, okay, they need to be saved, and he didn't make something to come and save us. He said, no, I'm going to do the saving. And so here at Chapel Life, we know what the Bible says. Our God is 3 in 1. He is Father, Son, and Spirit. And so God sent part of himself to save us back to himself. And then he sent his Spirit to be on the earth with us always until the end of all time, when he chooses to come back again. That's a reason to worship in awe and wonder all who have been made holy. And see, there's a progression, guys. What happens is that as you start to experience God and look at his word, you start to realize this, that looking at God and having this experience of awe and wonder actually leads you to something, and that is the fear of the Lord. Awe and wonder is the beginning of the fear of the Lord. And it's not something we talk a lot about, right, in churches, or even language we use today, because it feels like old-fashioned language to say we need to have the fear of the Lord. And I want to explain what I mean by that today and why, and it's important and healthy to have this in our relationship with God. You see, there was a king, and he was actually King David's son, King Solomon, and it said that he was arguably the wisest man who ever did live and who has lived since. And he wrote one of the books in the Bible called Proverbs. And in Proverbs 9:10, Solomon writes this: "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." So if we say that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding, and I'm telling you that awe and wonder is what leads you to fear of the Lord in the first place, this is what I'm talking about. It means that we have humility before God. It means that we acknowledge you are God and I am not. It means that we have just this little sprinkle of afraidness. I'm not talking about being scared that you're going to do the wrong thing and God's going to strike you with lightning. That's not what God does, and that's not who God is. And if you put one foot out of line, he's not a harsh dad that strikes you down for that. He's a loving father who always has arms open, who, if you run back, he has mercy and grace waiting. I'm talking about just having that little bit of afraidness that says, wow, I'm in the presence of a big, powerful, mighty God, and he loves me. That kind of afraidness, right? And then what you need to do is lean into the bigness and vastness of who he is. And when you just lean into that, your mind gets a little blown. And so awe and wonder is just about continually having your mind blown by who God is. Stay in that place of going, it's like being a little kid in a candy shop who has a bucket to fill and they just don't know what thing to put in first because they know once the bucket is full, they can't put any more, right? So they scan everything and maybe I'll just put one of those, but I think I'll want two of those, or I can't put too many of those because they're going to take up all the room. Like you've seen a kid in a candy shop with a small container that they need to fill, right? There's all that excitement because they're like, what do I get first? And it's a little bit like that with God. We're to have that attitude that says, God, there is just so much of you and I want it all, but I'm going to take time to behold this part of you. And that's going to lead me into realizing, wow, there's more of you. And then I'm going to take time to behold this part of you. And then I'm just going to scan back a little and take it all in. And then I'm going to come back in close and look at this part of you. So these next few months, this journey of awe and wonder is going to be learning what it is to fear God. We're going to unpack some stories of people who cultivated awe and wonder in their lives, and we're going to contrast that with some stories of people who maybe didn't do that so much. We're going to look at how we can grow awe and wonder of God in our own lives. And we're going to have times of just beholding him. Some days we might just sing songs and have communion here on a Sunday because we want to take time to just experience God and behold God. We're going to have times where we might sit and write stuff and think about, while I'm in the presence of God, what's he saying to me? This isn't going to be just a series of talks where someone's going to get up and tell you something wonderful about God each week and make you go, that's great. This is going to be a time where we grow together as people in the experience of beholding God in awe and wonder. It's a journey of discovery, and we are being invited into it together. For some of us, it'll be a restoration of first love. For some of us, it'll be going back to that first day when Jesus spoke to you and you knew that he was real and you opened your heart and said yes to him. For some, it's going to be refreshment. It's going to be the drink on a hot day that you're like, I needed this. For some of you, it's going to be a flame upon your heart and it's going to ignite passion and desire for God again. But for all of us, it is an invitation into a deeper, higher, wider, broader place of knowing God, of seeing God, and just having your mind be blown by him like never before. So are you guys ready for awe and wonder? You ready to have your mind blown by God just a little? Or maybe a lot? All right. So this is all very good and all very inspiring, and we love the pictures of the sunset and all the places you've been to, Rose. But what am I supposed to do this week with all this stuff you've told me? Well, I'm very glad you asked. Good question. Tomorrow we wake up and it's Monday. And Sunday was good, but I can't remember what you talked about, Rose, because you talk a lot. So just give me something easy to take home. Here is your something easy to take home for tomorrow. This is how we're going to start to practice awe and wonder this week. First thing, don't overcomplicate it. I want to tell you, you actually can't get beholding God in awe and wonder wrong, because you're going to do it different to this person and this person's going to do it different to you, because each of you is going to have something different that triggers in your heart that makes you take that moment of, wow, God. Wow, God. For some of you, it'll be a scripture. It'll be reading of the Bible. For some of you, it's going to be listening to someone preaching in a podcast. For some of you, it's going to be going outside for a walk and seeing the sunrise or the sunset. Or I know that for me, you know how the city and people who live around here will see it all the time, the hot air balloons in the morning, right? That for me, I'm like, I just sit by the window and just watch them count how many I can see. That for me, the hot air balloons, that's my moment of awe and wonder every day. I feel like God puts them in the sky just for me. So if you think they're for you, they're not. They're just for me, right? But this is what I want you to do. Find your thing this week. Find your thing. Find your place. Find your moment. Find your something that captivates you and makes you think of God and be in awe of who He is. Just find your thing. It could be 25 things, but I'm not asking you for that. Find your one thing. And then when you found it, just stay there for a bit. Don't rush, because the temptation is to move quickly. And I know we all have really busy lives. I'm not discounting that for a second. We all have busy lives. But you are never wasting time when you spend it with God. In fact, what I have always found is that when you honor time with God, He redeems time for you somewhere in the day, and you get more back that you didn't realize you were going to have. So just stay there for a little bit and breathe it in. What I want you to do is just stay there long enough that you start to feel those changes in your body that we talked about. You start to feel a little calmer. You start to feel a little less stressed. You start to feel a little more focused for the moment or the day. You start to feel a bit more connected with God. Just stay. For some people, it'll happen in 45 seconds. For some, it'll take 8 or 9 minutes. Just depends how you're feeling and how much sleep you had the night before, right? It's going to depend. But just stay there for a little bit and just allow yourself to respond to God. That's the goal. Find one thing and connect to God this week so that you can look at Him in awe and wonder.